a masterclass in ungrateful offspring, or how I learned to stop worrying and love being called human luggage. You're just a burden on our shoulders, my delightful daughter Alice announced on my birthday, with all the warmth of a tax inspector delivering audit results. Ah, the sweet symphony of family love. Nothing quite says, "Happy birthday, Dad," like being told you're essentially human baggage, does it? That evening, after being ceremoniously ejected from the house I'd been foolish enough to purchase for them, because apparently buying your children a home is just the first step in a very expensive hostage negotiation, I did what any reasonable person would do. I froze their access to all my credit cards, canceled their first-class tickets to Hawaii, and embarked on what they clearly thought was beyond my geriatric capabilities. Thinking for myself. But that, my dear listeners, was merely the opening act in this three-ring circus of family dysfunction. The shopping list crumpled in my weathered hand like my expectations of familial decency. "Alice, could you drive me to the store? I need supplies for the barbecue tonight." The words hung in our pristine Kalispell kitchen like a question nobody particularly wanted to answer. Morning sunlight streamed through windows onto counters cluttered with abandoned coffee mugs. Rather fitting metaphors for our abandoned conversations. Really. My daughter glanced up from her phone with the enthusiasm of someone being asked to donate a kidney. "Are you serious right now? It's just a quick trip," I ventured, clearly having confused myself with someone whose requests mattered. "I've invited Jim and Carol over. Perhaps Dave as well." "Dad." "No." She stood with the dramatic flair of someone auditioning for a community theater production of Ungrateful Children, the musical. Her chair scraped against the tiles like nails on a chalkboard, or perhaps that was just the sound of my last hope dying. "I'm not your bloody chauffeur." And then came the piece de resistance. "You're just a burden on our shoulders. You know that." There it was. The birthday greeting I'd been waiting 65 years to hear. Nothing says parental achievement unlocked, quite like your own offspring informing you that you've become human inconvenience. "Alice, it's my birthday," I said, as if birthdays held some mystical power to transform selfish adults into decent human beings. Spoiler alert, they don't. "Your birthday," she laughed with the kind of sharp bitterness that could cut glass. "You think that makes you special? You think that changes anything?" Enter Logan, stage right, arms crossed in that universal pose of men who've confused intimidation with masculinity. "What's all the noise about? Dad wants me to chauffeur him about like some sort of taxi service." Alice spat, because apparently requesting basic human decency from one's family is equivalent to demanding royal treatment. "Jesus, Ralph." Logan's voice carried that familiar contempt I'd grown so accustomed to. "Can't you sort this yourself? We're not running a bloody charity here." Charity. That's rich. Coming from a man whose entire existence had been subsidized by my generosity. But more on that delicious irony later. My fingers tightened around the shopping list. Beer, steaks, corn, charcoal. Simple things for what I'd foolishly imagined would be a simple celebration. "I've never asked for much." "Haven't asked for much?" Alice's voice climbed to frequencies that probably had dogs wincing 3 streets away. "You live in our house, eat our food, use our utilities. Everything we do revolves around taking care of you. Our house." Let that phrase marinate for a moment, won't you? The house I'd purchased, the mortgage I'd guaranteed, the deposit I'd provided, all somehow transformed into their house through the alchemy of breathtaking ingratitude. The kitchen fell silent except for the refrigerator's hum, which seemed to be the only thing in the house still doing its job without complaint. "Right?" I said, grabbing my coat with the resigned efficiency of someone who'd finally grasped the plot. "I'll manage." Alice slammed her palm on the counter with the dramatic timing of a soap opera villain. "Don't play the victim, Dad. We all know how this works." "Indeed we do, Alice. Indeed we do." I walked out without another word, leaving behind Mrs. Peterson's birthday card, the only acknowledgement of my existence that hadn't come wrapped in resentment. The morning air bit at my cheeks as I pulled out my phone, fingers surprisingly steady despite the tremor of rage in my chest. "Yellow cab?" "Yes, I need a ride to Miller's Market." The taxi arrived within minutes, its driver nodding with the professional courtesy that had become so rare in my own home. Through the window, I watched their house. Sorry, our house. Shrink away, its white picket fence looking less like domestic bliss and more like prison bars. Special occasion? The driver asked, glancing at my crumpled shopping list. Birthday barbecue, I replied, the words tasting like sawdust mixed with disappointment. As we drove through downtown Kalispell, memories flooded back with the persistence of a particularly aggressive telemarketer. The day I'd signed the house deed over to Alice and Logan, thinking I was securing their future rather than financing my own emotional imprisonment. The college tuition I'd paid, £43,000, if you're keeping track. The wedding I'd funded like some sort of matrimonial lottery ticket that had failed to pay out in basic human decency. Every sacrifice had been willing, given with love. Rather like feeding pearls to swine, as it turned out. Miller's Market buzzed with Saturday morning shoppers who seemed blissfully unaware that somewhere among them, a man was having an existential crisis in the produce aisle. I selected each item with the care of someone who'd finally realized this might be his last act of domestic optimism. Thick ribeye steaks, fresh corn still wearing their green evening gowns, premium charcoal that cost more than Logan's contributions to household expenses. The cashier, a young man with genuinely kind eyes, helped me bag everything. Having folks over? A few old friends, I replied, paying with cash I'd had the foresight to withdraw earlier. Sometimes paranoia and preparation are indistinguishable. The taxi ride home passed in contemplative silence, broken only by my growing awareness that the word home might need some redefining. The driver helped carry bags to the front door, refusing my larger tip with a wave and a smile. Small kindnesses from strangers suddenly feeling more precious than family acknowledgement. Inside, the house had achieved that special quality of emptiness that comes when people actively avoid each other. Alice and Logan had vanished, presumably to their room to compose sonnets about my inconvenience. I unpacked methodically, arranging steaks in the refrigerator like a general preparing for battle, corn arranged in formation, charcoal stationed by the back door. The dining room table awaited its transformation from furniture into altar of hospitality. I pulled out the good plates. Maria and I had received them as wedding gifts 40 years ago, back when people believed in forever and children respected their parents. Each piece was placed with ceremonial precision, as if proper table setting could somehow restore dignity to this day. Through the window, the backyard grill stood ready, its metal surface gleaming with possibility. As I smoothed the tablecloth, something crystallized in my chest. Not anger, which was too hot and unfocused, but something cooler, more deliberate. A quiet certainty that I was done being treated like human luggage by people whose lives I'd bankrolled. The doorbell would ring soon. Real friends would arrive with genuine warmth. For a few hours, I'd remember what it felt like to be valued rather than tolerated. Standing at the window, watching afternoon shadows lengthen like my growing resolve, I clenched my fist. The grill waited, friends would come, and after that, things would most decidedly change. The doorbell's chime pulled me from my plotting, contemplating, and I opened the door to find Jim and Carol beaming with the kind of authentic warmth I'd forgotten existed. "Happy birthday, you old goat!" Jim clapped my shoulder while Carol kissed my cheek, her perfume a gentle reminder that some people still believed in small kindnesses. "Thought we'd never make it," Carol laughed. Traffic was absolutely dreadful coming through town. Dave arrived moments later, clutching a six-pack and wearing his signature flannel shirt like a badge of authenticity. "Ready to burn some meat, Ralph?" We moved to the backyard where Montana's big sky stretched endlessly above us, providing the kind of perspective that makes family drama seem appropriately small. The grill fired up with a satisfying whoosh, flames dancing in blue and orange celebration. "Remember when we used to do this every weekend?" Dave settled into a lawn chair with the contentment of a man who'd never been called a burden. "Back when we thought we'd live forever." "Speak for yourself," Carol teased. "I'm still planning on immortality." Their laughter filled the air like music from a world where people actually enjoyed each other's company. This was what I'd wanted: simple friendship, easy conversation, the radical concept of being valued for existing rather than for what I could provide. The steaks sizzled, filling the yard with the kind of rich, smoky scent that makes life worth living. "Are Alice and Logan joining us?" Jim asked, glancing toward the house with the optimism of someone who hadn't yet learned my family's true nature. "I'll ask," I replied, though we all knew how this would end. Inside, I found them in the living room, absorbed in their phones with the dedication of monks studying sacred texts. "My friends are here. Fancy joining us?" Alice looked up with an expression that could have curdled milk. "No thanks. I'm not interested in some geriatric gathering." Logan didn't even lift his eyes from his screen, because basic courtesy is apparently too much effort. "Yeah, we'll pass on the pensioner convention." Heat rose in my cheeks, though whether from embarrassment or rage was unclear. "They're good people. They'd like to meet you." "I'm sure they would." Alice's voice dripped with enough sarcasm to fill a swimming pool. "But I've got better things to do than pretend to care about your pathetic little birthday party." I returned to the backyard, forcing a smile that probably looked as authentic as a politician's campaign promises. My friends had heard everything through the open door. I could see it in their carefully neutral expressions, the way they suddenly became fascinated by their beer bottles. "Everything all right?" Carol asked with the gentle concern of someone who actually cared about the answer. "Fine. They're just busy," I lied, flipping steaks with the mechanical precision of someone whose heart was breaking in real time. The memory hit me then, sharp as a kitchen knife. 3 years ago, Logan approaching me with his business plan. Some vague startup nonsense about app development. I'd written him a £15,000 check without hesitation, believing in dreams that turned out to be expensive fantasies. The business failed within 6 months, the money vanishing like morning mist, leaving behind only the bitter aftertaste of misplaced trust. "These steaks look perfect," Dave said, clearly attempting to resurrect the evening's corpse. We ate in companionable silence, though the food tasted like disappointment seasoned with regret. Eventually, Jim checked his watch with the practiced efficiency of someone accustomed to awkward exits. "We should probably head out. Carol's got book club tomorrow." At the front door, Carol squeezed my hand. "Thank you for a lovely evening, Ralph. The steaks were wonderful. Happy birthday, dear friend." Jim's handshake lingered like a blessing. "Take care of yourself." I walked them to the gate, watching their taillights disappear into the Montana dusk, taking with them the last remnants of civilized human interaction I'd experienced that day. Back inside, Alice and Logan waited in the living room like a tribunal of two, arms crossed in perfect synchronization. Clearly, they'd been practicing their intimidation poses. "Nice party," Alice said, her voice sharp enough to perform surgery. "Really showed us how important you are." Logan's smile could have frozen hell. "Yeah, Ralph, truly impressive guest list." I stood there, hands still smelling of smoke and shattered expectations, feeling something dangerous stirring in my chest. The evening chill crept through the closing door like reality seeping through the cracks of my delusions. "Really nice show you put on," Alice began, warming up for her grand performance. "What the hell were you thinking? Bringing those old fossils into our house?" "They're my friends," I said, voice steady despite the earthquake building inside me. "Good people who wanted to celebrate. This is our house." Logan pointed his finger like a weapon of mass instruction. "You live under our roof. You don't get to invite random people over whenever you feel like playing host." Random people. Friends I'd known for decades reduced to random people by a man whose existence I'd subsidized like a very expensive charity case. "We didn't agree to host your little senior citizens social club?" Alice nodded, clearly pleased with her contribution to the evening's cruelty. "I cooked, cleaned. They didn't disturb anything." "That's not the point." Logan's voice rose with righteous indignation that would have been impressive if it weren't so thoroughly undeserved. "The point is, you don't make decisions here. You're a guest in this house, and guests don't throw parties." Guest. In the house I'd purchased. The house where I'd signed mortgage papers, believing family meant something more than shared DNA and financial exploitation. "If you can't respect our rules," Alice said, arms folding tighter like she was hugging her own cruelty, Then perhaps you need to find somewhere else to live. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the distant hum of appliances that were probably more grateful for my presence than my own family. I looked at them both, my daughter and her husband, and saw strangers wearing familiar faces. Fine. Alice blinked, clearly having expected more groveling. What? I said fine. I turned toward the staircase, hand gripping the banister like a lifeline. I'll pack. Logan scoffed behind me with the confidence of someone who'd never faced consequences. Don't be dramatic, Ralph. We're just trying to set boundaries. Boundaries. How delightfully modern. In my day, we called it basic human decency, but apparently that's gone the way of handwritten letters and politicians with integrity. I climbed the stairs with deliberate precision, each step marking another small victory against a lifetime of being taken for granted. My room, the guest room apparently, waited at the hallway's end like a refuge I'd been too blind to recognize. From the closet, I retrieved my old suitcase, its leather handle worn smooth by decades of business trips and family holidays. Back when family meant something other than people who tolerate you for financial benefit. Clothes folded neatly into the case with the efficiency of someone who'd finally found motivation. Toiletries gathered from the bathroom like evidence of my temporary residence. The photograph of Maria and me from our last anniversary, taken before cancer took her and left me vulnerable to our daughter's particular brand of loving manipulation. My fingers traced Maria's smile as I wrapped the photo in a soft shirt. She'd have been appalled by tonight's performance. Family, she used to say, is about love, not obligation. Turned out she was half right. It wasn't about obligation. It was about exploitation. The memory struck like lightning. Alice's wedding day, 6 years ago. The bill had been staggering. £28,000 for flowers, catering, photography, and enough champagne to float a small yacht. I'd written the check without hesitation, watching my daughter dance in white silk, believing I was investing in happiness rather than funding my own future misery. Worth every penny, I'd told Maria that night, both of us exhausted but smiling. Now Alice wanted me gone for the crime of having friends. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. Downstairs, Alice and Logan had returned to the sofa, pretending to watch television with the dedication of method actors. Neither looked up as I approached, suitcase wheels rolling softly across hardwood floors I'd helped pay for. I placed my house key on the coffee table with a gentle click. The metal caught the TV's blue glow for a moment, then settled into shadow like my role in this family. Ralph, Alice started, but I was already walking toward the door. Where are you going? Logan's voice carried a note of something that might have been uncertainty, or perhaps just concern about his mortgage payments. I opened the front door, cool night air rushing in to fill the space between us. Out. The door closed behind me with the same deliberate care I'd used all evening, but this time I was on the other side, standing on the porch of a house that was no longer my problem. The street stretched into darkness like possibility itself, streetlights creating pools of yellow warmth on empty pavement. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once then fell silent, probably having more sense than I'd shown for the past several years. My suitcase wheels began their rhythmic rumble against concrete, each bump a small percussion note in my symphony of newfound freedom. The night air tasted of liberation and uncertainty in equal measures, rather like a fine wine with notes of, what the hell happens now? Kalispell at night possessed a gentleness it lacked during the day, as if darkness had mercy on the wounded and weary. My footsteps echoed against quiet pavement while memories bubbled up with the persistence of emotional indigestion. Alice at 18, sobbing in my kitchen after her first heartbreak. I'd held her while she cried, promising things would improve, that she deserved someone who'd treat her with respect. The irony wasn't just bitter, it was practically toxic. The commercial district beckoned ahead, where I knew the Pine Lodge Motel waited like a beacon of modest independence. My legs, unaccustomed to such sustained rebellion, already ached with the effort, but physical discomfort felt cleansing. Each step was a small act of revolution against years of quiet submission. A car passed, headlights briefly illuminating my path like a spotlight on this one-man show of domestic insurrection. The driver probably wondered about the old man walking alone with luggage, but I felt no shame. If anything, I felt more purposeful than I had in months. I passed the elementary school where Alice had attended reception. Yes, we call it reception here, not kindergarten. Its playground equipment casting strange shadows in moonlight. I remembered collecting her here, her small hand in mine while she chattered about finger painting and playground politics. When had that bright, loving child become the cold woman who just evicted me from my own investment property? The memory of Maria's funeral hit like a physical blow. Alice, devastated and lost, leaning against me as earth fell on her mother's coffin. I'd promised to care for her, to ensure she never felt abandoned. For 2 years after Maria's death, I'd been Alice's anchor, helping her navigate grief, funding therapy sessions, being present whenever summoned. This was how it ended, with house keys on a coffee table and suitcase wheels on empty streets. The Pine Lodge Motel's neon sign buzzed softly ahead, red letters spelling vacancy, like a welcome mat for the emotionally displaced. The night clerk, a young woman with tired eyes and genuine warmth, checked me in without judgment. Room 12, quiet spot round the back. The key was proper metal, heavy in my palm. Real keys for real doors, something honest about that transaction. Morning light filtered through threadbare curtains like hope through cynicism, painting golden stripes across carpet that had clearly seen better decades. I'd slept surprisingly well, better than I had in months, actually. Leaving that house had apparently lifted a weight I'd grown so accustomed to carrying that I'd forgotten what freedom felt like. Something had shifted overnight, as if abandoning my role as family ATM had unlocked reserves of energy I'd forgotten I possessed. The mirror reflected a man who looked different from the one who'd checked in. Same gray hair, same lined face, but the eyes held something new. Purpose, determination, possibly mild insanity, but I was choosing to interpret it as character development. The room phone sat solid and black with proper buttons. None of this touchscreen nonsense. Yes, Pine Lodge Motel. I need transport to First National Bank on Main Street. 10 minutes, came the efficient reply. Outside, Kalispell was performing its morning routine. Coffee shops opening, people walking dogs, children waiting for school buses. Normal rhythms of a community I'd financially supported for years but somehow never truly belonged to. Business at the bank? The taxi driver asked, professional curiosity evident. Taking care of some accounts, I replied, which was delightfully understated given what I had planned. The bank's marble lobby echoed with my footsteps like a cathedral of capitalism. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in stark, honest illumination, rather appropriate for what was about to unfold. The morning teller, middle-aged with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, smiled with genuine warmth. Good morning. How may I help you? I need to revoke credit card access for specific authorized users. She paused, fingers hovering over her keyboard like a pianist about to perform a difficult piece. Are the cards lost or stolen, sir? No. I want to remove access permissions for Alice King and Logan King, my daughter and son-in-law. Her eyebrows rose with the subtlety of someone trained in banking discretion. That's rather unusual, sir. Are you certain? Family financial disputes can be complicated. Complicated. Rather like explaining quantum physics to a golden retriever, but considerably less rewarding. I'm absolutely certain, I said, voice carrying no hesitation. They no longer have my permission to use my accounts. Professional discretion engaged like armor. I'll need identification and account verification. Papers shuffled across polished granite. Forms to sign, authorizations to revoke, signatures to witness. Each pen stroke felt like another chain breaking, another small victory against years of financial servitude. The memory surfaced as I signed the final document. Just 2 months ago, Alice's tearful call about kitchen renovations. The estimate was £12,000. I transferred the money that same day, no questions asked, believing I was investing in family harmony rather than funding my own emotional imprisonment. The changes take effect immediately, the teller explained, sliding paperwork into a folder with the satisfaction of bureaucracy completed. All cards linked to your accounts will require direct authorization for future use. Perfect. Outside, the morning air felt crisp with possibility. Another taxi waited. I'd planned each step with the precision of a military campaign, if military campaigns involved financially strangling ungrateful offspring. As the bank receded in the mirror, I experienced something I hadn't felt in years. The satisfaction of making a decision purely for myself. No consultation, no guilt, no second-guessing. Just clean, decisive action. My pocket began vibrating insistently. Once, twice, 3 times. I didn't need to look to know who was calling. The banking system works with remarkable efficiency when it comes to declined transactions. The phone buzzed against my leg like an angry wasp as the taxi navigated downtown traffic. Alice's name flashed with each insistent ring, and I found myself almost looking forward to this conversation. "What the hell did you do?" Alice's voice exploded before I could offer pleasantries, because apparently, we were beyond civilized discourse now. "My card was just declined at Nordstrom. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was?" "Hello to you too, Alice. Don't you dare take that tone with me. I was buying shoes for a work presentation, and the cashier had to cut up my card, right there in front of everyone." The taxi hit a pothole, jostling me against worn vinyl while Kalispell's main street rolled past. The same shops where Alice had dragged me countless times, plastic in hand, purchasing things she claimed were necessities. "How does it feel?" I asked, voice steady as mountain stone. "How does what feel? Being humiliated by my own father. Being a burden. Being an embarrassment." I let the words settle like snow on a frozen lake. "Yesterday you informed me I was just a burden on your shoulders. Today you're calling because you can't buy shoes with my money." Silence stretched across the connection like a held breath. The driver pretended not to listen, but I caught his eyes in the mirror. He'd probably heard enough family drama to recognize relationships fracturing in real time. "This is different," Alice's voice returned, higher now, edged with something that might have been panic. "You can't just cut us off. We have expenses, obligations." So did I. For 20 years. The memory flashed. Alice at 25, calling from some boutique in Edinburgh where she'd found the perfect dress for a charity gala. £300 for a single evening's vanity. I'd given her my card details over the phone without hesitation, believing her happiness was worth any price. What a delightfully naive old fool I'd been. "Dad, you're being ridiculous. This isn't how family works." "You're absolutely right." I watched a mother pushing a pram past a bus stop, her toddler pointing excitedly at a passing spaniel. Simple joy, uncomplicated by manipulation or guilt. Family doesn't work by calling each other burdens. Family doesn't work by evicting people from homes they purchased. We didn't throw you out. You chose to leave. After you told me to find somewhere else to live. Her voice cracked slightly. "That's not, we were just frustrated. You can't just." "I can." The words felt revolutionary. When was the last time I'd said them to her? "I can make my own decisions about my own money. Seems like a burden you'll have to carry now." I ended the call with surgical precision, the phone falling silent in my palm. The taxi continued its steady progress past the library where I'd taken Alice for story time 30 years ago, past the park where she'd learned to ride a bicycle with my steadying hand. How wonderfully poetic that the road now stretched ahead like a path to properly enforced boundaries. "Everything all right back there?" the driver asked with genuine concern. "Getting better by the minute." The Pine Lodge sign came into view, but as we approached, I noticed a figure near the entrance. Tall, broad-shouldered, arms crossed in a posture I recognized all too well. Someone was waiting for me, and judging by their body language, they weren't bearing good news or birthday greetings. The taxi slowed in the gravel car park, afternoon shadows stretching across asphalt like fingers of approaching drama. Through the windscreen, Logan paced under the Pine Lodge sign like a caged predator, shoulders tense, hands clenched, radiating the kind of aggressive energy that suggests someone's credit limit has been severely compromised. "That'll be £12.50, the driver said, but his eyes remained fixed on Logan's agitated performance. "Keep the change." I handed him £15. pocketing the key card with the satisfaction of a man who could still afford modest generosity. As I emerged from the taxi, Logan spotted me immediately, striding across the lot with quick, aggressive steps. His face had achieved that particular shade of red that suggests either high blood pressure or profound financial inconvenience. "Ralph, what the hell do you think you're playing at?" I closed the car door with deliberate calm, facing him as he approached. The afternoon air carried pine scent and distant tranquility, a peaceful contrast to the storm brewing in Logan's bloodshot eyes. "Logan, what brings you here? Don't act stupid with me." He was close enough now that I could see veins bulging in his neck like roadmaps of rage. "Alice's card got declined. Our airline confirmations just got canceled. You think you can just... I think I can make decisions about my own money." My voice maintained that pleasant steadiness that really irritates angry people. Revolutionary concept, I know. Logan's hands curled into fists, a gesture that would have been more intimidating if I hadn't been funding his lifestyle for the past several years. The memory surfaced. Logan's business partner had embezzled £30,000, leaving him bankrupt and desperate. I'd written the rescue check the same day he'd called. No questions asked, believing family meant covering each other's catastrophic mistakes. "You senile old fool," Logan snarled, stepping closer with all the menace of someone whose credit cards have suddenly stopped working. "You're going to fix this right now, or what?" I took a step back, not from fear but to maintain conversational distance. "You'll what, exactly?" Logan lunged forward, grabbing for my shirt collar with the tactical sophistication of a pub brawler. But before his fingers could make contact, the taxi driver was suddenly there, stepping between us with the solid presence of someone who dealt with entitled twits before. "Right, that's enough of that." The driver's voice carried quiet authority that would have impressed a primary school headmaster. Logan stopped mid-reach, clearly surprised by civilian intervention. "This is none of your business. This gentleman paid his fare politely and treated me with respect," the driver said, not backing down despite being shorter than Logan. "You want to throw punches? Do it somewhere else. I won't stand by watching you attack a decent man." The confrontation balanced on a knife's edge while three strangers shared a car park moment, two of them protecting each other from the third. Logan's face cycled through anger, confusion, and something that might have been shame if he'd been capable of such sophisticated emotion. "This isn't over, Ralph," Logan spat, but he was already retreating like the coward he'd always been. Not by a long shot. He stalked back to his pickup truck, engine roaring to life with unnecessary aggression. Gravel sprayed as he accelerated out of the lot, the sound of his departure echoing off weathered motel walls like a very expensive tantrum. I turned to the taxi driver, who was straightening his jacket as if nothing unusual had happened. "Thank you. That was unexpected kindness." He shrugged with genuine warmth. "Can't stand by watching bullies work, can I? Take care of yourself." The taxi purred away gently, leaving me alone in sudden quiet. I walked toward my room, key card steady despite adrenaline still coursing through my veins like liquid vindication. Standing up to Logan, having a stranger defend my dignity, watching my son-in-law retreat like a defeated playground bully. It all crystallized into something harder and more certain than mere anger. This was what self-respect felt like. I'd almost forgotten. Sunlight pierced motel blinds like golden arrows of possibility, pulling me from the most restful sleep I'd experienced in years. Yesterday's confrontation with Logan had left me energized rather than drained. Apparently, finally standing one's ground unlocks forgotten reserves of strength. I showered and dressed with ceremonial care, selecting my best casual attire. Today demanded dignity, a presentation of self that reflected the seriousness of my intentions. The bathroom mirror reflected a man who looked older than his years but carried himself with renewed purpose. Rather like a phoenix, if phoenixes wore sensible shoes and had Yorkshire accents. The bus stop sat 3 blocks from the motel, marked by a simple metal sign and wooden bench that had clearly seen better decades. Kalispell's public transport wasn't extensive, but it would suffice for my purposes. As I waited, watching early commuters hurry past clutching coffee cups like life preservers, I felt no urgency. Time was finally on my side. The bus arrived with a gentle wheeze of hydraulics, the driver nodding as I climbed aboard. Through windows, Montana's rolling hills stretched toward distant mountains, landscape unchanged by human drama, which put things in rather helpful perspective. Downtown Legal District, I told the driver when he asked my destination. Big day ahead? You could say that. The law office of Morrison, Baker and Associates occupied the second floor of a historic brick building on Main Street, the kind of establishment that suggested serious business conducted by serious people who understood the gravity of severing family ties with surgical precision. The receptionist, a professional woman with graying hair and genuinely kind eyes, scheduled me immediately when I explained my requirements. "Mr. Morrison can see you now," she said, leading me down a hallway lined with diplomas and photographs of Kalispell's legal history. A rogues gallery of justice, if you will. James Morrison was younger than I'd expected, perhaps 45, with the careful attention to detail that comes from handling people's final wishes with appropriate gravity. His office smelled of leather-bound certainty and old books, wood paneling creating an atmosphere of serious business for serious people. "Mr. King, I understand you'd like to revise your will? Completely rewrite it?" I settled into the client chair, feeling the weight of impending justice. "I want to establish a charitable fund instead of leaving everything to my family." Morrison's eyebrows rose with professional discretion, though his expression remained carefully neutral. "That's certainly within your rights. Are there specific charities you have in mind? Organizations that help seniors who've been abandoned by their families, people who need their dignity restored." For the next hour, we worked through delicious details. Morrison explained options, consequences, legal requirements. Each clause revised felt like another weight lifting from shoulders that had carried ungrateful burdens far too long. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like a chorus of bureaucratic angels singing hallelujah to financial justice. "This is remarkably decisive," Morrison said as I signed the final documents with flourishes that would have made Dickens proud. "Most people struggle with changes this significant, especially regarding family. Most people haven't been called a burden by their own daughter," I replied, pen scratching across official paper like carving commandments in stone. "Most people haven't funded their own emotional imprisonment for decades." Each signature felt like another door closing on my old life and opening onto something cleaner, more honest. Rather like spring cleaning, but with legal documents and significantly more satisfaction. "The changes take effect immediately," Morrison explained, sliding copies into a manila envelope with the reverence reserved for important documents. "Your assets will be held in trust, distributed according to your specifications upon your death. Your family will receive notification if they were named in previous versions." "Perfect." I shook his hand, appreciating the firm grip and direct eye contact that suggested we just completed something properly momentous. Walking down courthouse steps, I felt lighter than I had in decades. The afternoon sun painted everything in sharp relief: storefronts, passing cars, people conducting their ordinary lives, unaware that somewhere among them, an old man had just reclaimed his dignity through the sacred art of legal retribution. My phone chimed softly, a sound I'd grown to associate with fresh complications. The notification showed a calendar reminder I'd apparently set and forgotten. A call to my sister in Oregon. A trip I'd postponed for years to prioritize Alice's endless financial emergencies. Now it felt like a promise to myself, a step toward reconnecting with family who actually appreciated my existence rather than merely tolerating it for monetary benefit. The bustling Kalispell pavement welcomed me back into ordinary life's rhythm as I emerged from Morrison's office, signed papers resting securely in my jacket pocket like revolutionary documents. The future I'd spent decades building for Alice and Logan had just been redirected to strangers who would actually appreciate the gift. A city bus wheezed to a stop at the corner, passengers filing on with the patient efficiency of people accustomed to small-town transportation schedules. I climbed aboard, dropping exact change into the fare box and finding a window seat where Montana's vast landscape stretched beyond the glass like freedom itself. As the bus pulled away from the legal district, my eye caught a travel advertisement plastered on a storefront window. Pristine beaches, swaying palms, promises of tropical paradise. The image triggered a memory so sharp it felt like physical pain. 3 weeks ago, I'd booked that Hawaii vacation. First-class flights for all three of us. Ocean view suite at the Grand Wailea. Rental car upgrade. A celebration of what I'd naively believed was family unity. £28,000 charged to my platinum card without hesitation, imagining Alice and Logan's faces when I surprised them with printed confirmations. A family trip, I'd told myself, to heal old wounds and create new memories. The irony now tasted more bitter than hospital coffee. Back in my motel sanctuary, I pulled out my phone and opened the airline app with the satisfaction of someone about to commit justifiable financial homicide. The reservation appeared immediately. King party of 3, departing July 15th, returning July 22nd. Premium seats with extra legroom, priority boarding, complimentary champagne service that would never touch ungrateful lips. I tapped the cancellation button with surgical precision. Are you sure you want to cancel this reservation? Cancellation fees may apply. My thumb hovered for exactly 1 second, just long enough to savor the moment before confirming. The hotel booking followed suit. 7 nights in paradise, now reduced to a confirmation email marked "Cancelled" in beautiful, emphatic red letters. Each canceled reservation felt like another shackle falling away. Another decision made purely for my own peace of mind rather than someone else's unearned happiness. My phone's contact list scrolled past dozens of names before finding the one I wanted. Jim Harrison, my oldest friend and one of the few people who'd witnessed last night's humiliation firsthand. Ralph, how are you holding up after yesterday's unpleasantness? Better than expected, actually. Jim, would you be free for coffee this afternoon? There's something rather important I need to tell you. Of course, the usual place, Murphy's Cafe on 3rd Street. 2 hours work for you. Perfect. See you there. I ended the call and checked the bedside clock. 45 minutes until our meeting. Enough time to process the morning's legal warfare and prepare for the conversation that would mark yet another step away from the man I'd been toward the person I was becoming. The cancellation emails had stopped pinging, leaving the room in blessed silence. Outside, Kalispell continued its unhurried pace, unaware that somewhere in room 12 of the Pine Lodge Motel, a man was systematically dismantling every bridge he'd built to ungrateful children. I straightened my collar and checked my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The face looking back still belonged to Ralph King, but the eyes held something new, clarity that comes from finally understanding the difference between love and enabling, between family loyalty and financial servitude. Time to go meet the only person from yesterday's gathering who'd actually seemed pleased to see me. Murphy's Cafe's brass handle felt solid and welcoming as I pushed open the door, afternoon sunlight giving way to warm amber glow of Edison bulbs and exposed brick walls. The aroma of freshly ground coffee beans and baking pastries wrapped around me like civilization itself. A stark contrast to the sterile efficiency of legal offices and the lonely quiet of motel rooms. Jim was already there, rising from a corner table with the same genuine smile that had made him such welcome company at yesterday's disaster of a birthday celebration. His handshake was firm, his eyes carrying the kind of concern that comes from decades of friendship. "Ralph, my friend, you look." He paused, studying my face with the attention of someone who'd known me since we had hair and hope. Different, stronger somehow. Funny how a good night's sleep and some decisive action can change a man's perspective. We approached the counter where a barista with paint-stained fingers and genuinely kind eyes took our orders. Black coffee for Jim, cappuccino for me. An indulgence I rarely allowed myself when Alice was monitoring my spending like a hawk watching prey. Settled at our table with steaming mugs between us, Jim leaned forward with the patient attention of someone who'd witnessed enough of life's upheavals to recognize when a friend needed proper listening. "So tell me what happened after we left last night." Carol was worried. She said she heard voices from inside when we were saying goodbye. The words tumbled out like confession at Sunday Mass. I described the confrontation in the living room, Alice's cold dismissal of our guests, Logan's assertion of dominance over their house. Jim's expression darkened as I recounted the key left on the coffee table, the suitcase rolling down dark streets, the strange peace I discovered in that narrow motel bed. "They actually threw you out." Jim's voice carried disbelief that would have been touching if it weren't so thoroughly justified. On your birthday, after calling you a burden. Yes. Jesus, Ralph. I knew they seemed distant lately, but that's... He shook his head with the bewilderment of someone witnessing genuine human decency's murder. That's unconscionable. I continued with the morning's events. Blocked credit cards, Alice's furious phone call, Logan's attempted intimidation in the car park. Jim's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips as understanding dawned. And then this morning, I concluded with the satisfaction of someone delivering a punchline 20 years in the making. I rewrote my will. Everything goes to charity now. Everything. A foundation for seniors who've been abandoned by their families. People who understand what it means to have their love weaponized against them. The silence stretched between us, broken only by gentle clatter of dishes and low murmur of other conversations. Jim set down his cup with deliberate care, studying my face as if seeing me clearly for the first time in decades. You know what, Ralph? Good for you. His voice carried conviction that surprised us both. I've watched Alice and Logan treat you like a walking cash machine for years. We all have. But none of us knew how to say anything without overstepping. You saw it too? Of course we saw it. Last night at dinner, the way she rolled her eyes when you talked about your garden. The way Logan kept checking his phone like he had somewhere better to be. At your own bloody birthday party. For God's sake. The memory surfaced. Alice's bored expression as I described the tomatoes I'd been nurturing. Logan's dismissive snort when I'd mentioned hoping to visit my sister in Oregon. Details I'd noticed but dismissed, filing them under family dynamics, rather than recognizing them as symptoms of deeper disrespect. I keep wondering when it started, I said, stirring my cappuccino with the precision of someone performing surgery. When I stopped being their father and became their financial resource. Probably gradual. Jim reached across the table, his weathered hand briefly covering mine. People don't wake up one morning and decide to be cruel. They slide into it one small compromise at a time. But you've stopped the slide. That takes proper courage. My phone began ringing, the sound cutting through our conversation like a fire alarm at a funeral. Alice's name flashed on the screen, her photo a smiling image from last Christmas that now seemed like evidence from an emotional crime scene. Jim glanced at the phone, then back at my face with the expression of someone watching a thriller's climactic moment. You going to answer that? The trip was canceled because the person paying for it decided he didn't fancy vacationing with people who call him a burden. This is insane. Logan thinks we should have you committed, declared mentally incompetent. You're clearly not thinking straight. As her voice echoed off exposed brick walls, drawing stares like a magnet attracts metal filings, a wave of validation surged through me sharper than the steam rising from forgotten mugs. Actually, Alice, I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. You're destroying our family. How are we supposed to explain this to people? How are we supposed to pay for? You're supposed to pay for things the same way every other adult does. I interrupted with the patience of someone explaining basic arithmetic to a particularly slow child. With your own money, from your own job, using your own resources. The silence from the speaker lasted exactly 3 seconds before Alice's voice returned, higher and more desperate than a soprano hitting impossible notes. You can't do this. We have obligations. Logan's business needs. Logan's business is not my problem. Your shopping habits are not my problem. Your inability to live within your means is absolutely, categorically, not my problem. Each word emerged calm and measured, carrying the weight of years of suppressed frustration like artillery shells finding their target. Dad, please, you're scaring me. This isn't like you. You're absolutely right. The old me would have apologized by now. Would have transferred money to fix whatever crisis you've manufactured. Would have begged forgiveness for having the audacity to expect basic respect from my own daughter. Jim reached across the table, squeezing my free hand in encouragement that felt like backup arriving just when needed. But that man is gone, Alice. The man who raised you, who sacrificed everything for your happiness, who believed family meant something more than shared DNA and financial exploitation. You killed him the night you threw him out of his own house. You're my father. You can't just abandon. Watch me. I ended the call with surgical precision, Alice's protests cutting off mid-sentence like a radio being switched off. The cafe fell into complete silence for a heartbeat before something extraordinary happened. Someone started clapping. It began with the elderly woman at the corner table, her weathered hands coming together in slow, deliberate applause that carried the weight of shared experience. Then the businessman near the window joined in. The young mother with the pushchair. The university student with his laptop. Within seconds, the entire cafe was applauding. Not mockingly, but with genuine support, as if they'd all witnessed something rare and necessary. Some customers nodded knowingly. Others smiled with recognition that comes from their own experiences with ungrateful family members. "Well done," Jim said quietly, his own hands joining the symphony of approval. "Absolutely beautifully done." The next month unfolded like pages turning in a book I'd never dared read. A novel where the protagonist actually had a spine and used it for structural support rather than decoration. Within a week, I'd contacted Sarah Mitchell, Kalispell's most respected estate agent, a woman whose confidence and no-nonsense approach reminded me of the person I was becoming rather than the doormat I'd been. "I want something that's completely mine," I told her as we drove through tree-lined neighborhoods where normal families probably lived normal lives without treating each other like walking cash dispensers. Something with space to breathe. The house she showed me on Hillside Drive was perfect. A modest ranch with wide windows overlooking the Swan Mountains. A kitchen built for one person who actually enjoyed cooking rather than funding other people's culinary adventures. And a front porch that caught both sunrise and sunset like it was collecting hope. "It has good bones," Sarah said as I signed the purchase agreement with flourishes that belonged in a museum of personal liberation. "Rather like its new owner," I replied, surprising myself with something approaching optimism. Moving day arrived with the kind of crisp Montana morning that makes everything seem possible, even happiness. My possessions from the motel room fit into a single carload. Clothes, toiletries, Maria's photograph, and the manila envelope containing my new will. Everything else, I was discovering, had been unnecessary weight carried by a man who'd confused enabling with love. I drove to Flathead Lake, hiked trails I'd always promised myself I'd explore, and discovered that solitude felt like freedom rather than loneliness. Revolutionary concept. Really, enjoying one's own company without feeling obligated to fund someone else's. My phone buzzed occasionally with messages from Alice and Logan. Apologies that felt as calculated as political campaigns, pleas about mortgage payments and business expenses, accusations of cruelty wrapped in the language of family obligation like poison in pretty packaging. I read them once and deleted them immediately, feeling nothing but relief that their emergencies were no longer mine to solve. Rather like being cured of a chronic disease, only the disease had been my own misguided generosity. The voicemail from Logan was particularly pathetic. "Ralph, come on. We all said things we didn't mean. Alice misses you. I miss you. Can't we work this out like family?" Family. The word had lost its power to guilt me into submission, like a spell that only works if you believe in magic. Instead, I spent my days exploring newfound freedom. The grocery store where I bought exactly what I wanted to eat. The hardware store where I selected tools for projects that pleased only me. The bookstore where I purchased novels I'd always meant to read but never had time for, because someone always needed rescuing from self-inflicted financial disasters. 3 weeks into June, I stood on my new front porch watching the sun set behind mountains, a travel brochure fluttering in my hand like a flag of independence. Scotland, Ireland, places I'd dreamed of visiting but never prioritized because Alice always had more immediate needs for my resources. The brochure pages turned like new chapters, each destination representing choices I could make purely for joy rather than obligation. What a delightfully foreign concept. Spending money on myself without requiring committee approval from ungrateful offspring. The evening breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and possibility, rustling through pines with a sound like quiet applause. Behind me, my house waited with lights in windows and dinner on the stove. A life sized exactly to fit one man who'd finally learned the difference between being alone and being lonely. Tomorrow I might call a travel agent. Next week, I might take that photography class I'd seen advertised at the community center. The future stretched ahead, unencumbered by guilt or the exhausting mathematics of keeping ungrateful people artificially happy. For the first time in decades, my time belonged entirely to me. As darkness settled over the mountains and stars began emerging in the vast Montana sky like diamonds scattered on black velvet, I folded the travel brochure and tucked it into my shirt pocket next to my heart. Rather like keeping hope close to where it belonged. The night was quiet except for the gentle sigh of wind through trees and the distant call of an owl claiming its territory. I had claimed mine too. If you enjoyed this tale of familial financial rebellion, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your own stories of learning that family isn't a license for exploitation. Remember, the only burden you're truly responsible for carrying is your own self-respect. And bloody hell, isn't that lighter than you thought it would be?